Welcome back, everyone, to the Journey Principles radio show. We are broadcasting to you live from that beautiful city of Oaks in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm your host, Josh Bledsoe, and today I have the privilege to be guest hosting with you, sir.
What's up, buddy?
Master Life Strategist and the seed planner himself, Steven Scoggins. How you doing?
Doing awesome, man. Been a crazy day, crazy week.
Yeah, slightly.
Nice job last week with our guest host.
Oh, thanks.
That was really cool.
She did all the work.
Very cool.
I just sat there and twirled in my chair a little bit. That's it.
That's awesome. Cool, man.
Well, today's show is going to be special. It's all about roadblocks.
Okay.
And you know a lot about roadblocks. We're going to talk about the specific 8 roadblocks that might get in some people's way. What does someone mean when they say, I'm stuck?
What they're really saying is I've had a hurdle in my life that I haven't been able to get over.
Okay.
Or I am missing clarity in my life, or I'm missing sense of purpose and direction and meaning. More than anything else, that's typically what being stuck means. It's the absence of knowing what's holding you back.
Oh, I like that. So that basically it's just lack of knowledge.
Mm-hmm. And it really, I mean, that's really what it boils down to. Unfortunately, when you're just getting started on your journey, and you're just trying to move forward and go somewhere special. One of the things that always happens inevitably is a lot of times you will hit different levels, and as you hit each level, you have to go through a certain level of various roadblocks. Most of those roadblocks, I think as human beings, we typically focus on roadblocks that are more internal than anything else.
Yeah.
Or actually, I'm sorry, external. So we focus on our relationships, we focus on the job we didn't get or the job we don't like, or we focus on who did what or how they did it. We kind of focus on all that stuff, you know, as a whole.
Yeah.
Reality is most of the roadblocks we have to overcome are actually inside of us already. Almost every single time when we do a deep enough dive, when we actually drill in, almost every single time it has to do with one or sometimes 2 of these roadblocks. Now, not everybody has. I think we all have all 8 roadblocks. But you typically have 2 or 3 that really kind of stand out.
Yeah.
That really kind of come from your blueprinting.
Yeah.
Really kind of come from some of your past behaviors, your infrastructure, your influences. A lot of the other things we talked about, which is why they're so hard to see.
Yeah.
You may see the symptom of, getting involved in a relationship and then being, hey, I want to be involved in the relationship, but no, I don't want to be involved in a relationship. Yes, I do. No, I don't. Yes, I do. Yes, I don't. The hot and cold feet kind of thing.
Sure.
Really, what that is, that's a symptom of one of the roadblocks.
Yeah, you're hitting on a good point there. And it's also important to note, folks, that when we start diving into these and we start picking them apart and talking about some of the triggers, some of the ways that you may find yourself in a roadblock and then how to overcome it, if you resonate with any of these at all, just be honest, and hopefully you're by yourself and someone else is not nudging you like, yeah, that's you. Just write it down. Simply just take notes on it, and you're going to learn today how to recognize it and then how to overcome it at the end of it. So, Steven, before we dive into each individual one of these, I want to ask, like, how does someone end up being stuck? Like, just this word "stuck" just sticks out to me. Stuck sticks out to me. Did you get that, Brian? It sticks out to me because so many people are concerned about it. Like they say, yes, that's me. I'm stuck. But how do they even get there?
You know, we could give a long dissertation on what that really means, but in essence, what it boils down to is you're unwilling to look at yourself. That's the quickest summary of being stuck.
That's the good hard truth right there.
The quickest way to get unstuck is to take a hard look at yourself in a constructive light. Where there's a lot of people, even one of the roadblocks we'll talk about in a minute. I mean it. I don't know where that came from.
North Carolina.
Yeah, we'll talk about in a minute. Comes from a place of over criticizing yourself.
Okay.
So we use a word all the time called explore and discover.
Yep.
Right. Just exploring who you are as a person, exploring your gifts, your talents, some of your struggles, and discovering your gifts, talents, and struggles.
Yeah.
All of that has to do with self-development, if you will. It's all looking inside.
Yeah.
And most of us struggle because we keep wanting to fix the surface. Like I said, we want to change the relationship. We want to change the job. You know, we want to stay at work so we don't have to deal with something at home or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of different things that go into that, but all that's symptom. Yeah. However, when you can dig down to the root cause and actually get the right perspective, a lot of times you're able to really dig yourself out of a hole and actually see yourself with a positive light, with constructive behaviors, and really discover and explore.
Yep.
You know.
And you're talking about actually fixing the issue, getting down to the honest problem versus just covering up the symptoms.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So you guys ready to get started? All right, let's start with the first one. The first roadblock that people may find themselves in is the avoider.
Yep.
Okay. And the avoider oftentimes grew up in a low affection or affirmation household, maybe they didn't get affirmation as much as they should, they struggle to see any problem areas of influence in their past, and they tend to verbalize it by saying, it's fine, it's no big deal, and they want to move on.
Yep.
So explain to us more about what an avoider is.
You know, a lot of us, you know, we see this with personality styles too. My good buddy CeeLo that taught me all about personality styles way back when. Avoiders tend to have a hard time with conflict as a whole.
Yeah, yeah, they do.
Because they don't want to have to face what may come across as something that may harm them.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. You're a father, right? You got Asher, right? Now you're a very loving father. Okay.
Oh, thanks.
You love your son dearly, and you're always there for him, and you're always playing with him and trying to teach him, and you're correcting him when you need to, and all that good stuff. You're doing all the right things as a dad. Okay. Now, in my case, my dad did all those things, but he did them later in life. So I was in my 30s before we really started to kind of bond and connect, like truly.
Okay.
Now, we bonded on the job site working, but it was work, and, you know, it's different.
Yeah.
But as far as any kind of level of real deep connection. So I grew up originally watching my dad avoid conflict at all cost. So rather than, I'll give you an example. So we were in a financial stressful time, going through some stuff. And we were going through it, and only to find out that we had an opportunity to actually save our financial future. But my dad was going to have to make a hard choice, swallow some ego, swallow some pride. And if he had done that, we would have been able to stabilize our financial picture. Unfortunately, due to his upbringing, due to the things that he dealt with, which in his lifestyle with his father, my grandfather was awesome, but he was not overly affectionate. You know, back in the 40s and the 50s and stuff like that, it wasn't really cool to be hugging on your son, or you had to be the tough guy, you know.
Yeah, life was different back then.
It was very different back then, you know. So, you know, I was probably 20 or so before my dad and I started hugging.
Wow.
Right? Because it wasn't ingrained in him to a degree.
That's important. Just a little side note, you know, the home you grew up in or the past you grew up in, just be graceful because your parents only knew what they knew and how they were raised.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it comes down to discovering, again, there's those words again, discovering and exploring what made up the circumstances.
Yeah.
What were the influences? What were the spiritual influences? What were the emotional influences? What were the environmental influences? What were they?
Yeah.
You guys talked a lot about influences last week, right?
Yep.
You really kind of got in there and got in the weeds a little bit. Same cause. That's why last week you guys were able to uncover, this is how I began feeling worthless. This is how I began feeling like I didn't matter. This is how... And it all stemmed from that one belief system.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So typically, the roadblock of avoidance, you will find yourself avoiding big decisions.
Yeah.
You will find yourself avoiding conflicts. You'll probably find yourself avoiding close relationships. You will probably feel you'll probably not necessarily stay in a state of hopelessness, but you'll find yourself not taking the chances that could actually reward your life.
So if I'm an avoider, would I also avoid things that challenge me? Would I also try not to push too hard, too fast, too long?
Yeah.
I'd like to stay in a safe place. Is that the same thing?
And that's the theology, is you are trying to stay in a safe place.
Okay.
But in order to grow, you have to constantly get outside of your comfort zone.
That's true.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if you're not getting outside of your comfort zone, by definition, you are what?
Stuck.
You see what I'm saying?
I'm complacent. Yes.
You know, so what especially with the avoider, what we try to do with people is we try to teach them how to confidently deal with the conflicts and the circumstances and decisions in front of them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the avoider simply needs more knowledge.
Yeah.
And needs a safe place in which to have confidence in to overcome the avoiding.
So they can do it, they just need some more knowledge and a place where they can trust people as well.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's probably going to have to go out of their way to kind of begin that level of trust. Michael Garner, a good friend of ours, he does a wonderful counseling service out here in Clayton.
He's watching too, by the way.
Is he really?
Hi,
Hey,
Mike.
What's up, dude? He does a great job of preparing a safe environment. You know, and really leaning in, good listening skills.
Very good.
Right? Avoiders need that type of soil to begin to shake that off.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that when you can finally break through the roadblock of avoidance, of being an avoider, your whole world opens up.
Yeah, I can see why.
It opens up because you begin to see opportunities where you once saw closed doors.
Yeah.
Because you're actually getting outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I heard a statement this weekend from a personal trainer. We're out there just sweating it and pushing it. And he goes, if you're sore, that means you're feeling change. Change is good. I'm like, yeah, but it still hurts.
It must have been one of those Spartan races.
Yeah, it was one of those trainers things to that. All right, so we talked about the avoider. They can conquer it by simply getting out of their comfort zone with a safe environment and more knowledge, right?
Right.
Just more knowledge. Okay, let's move on to the pleaser. All right, these are the people pleasers. we all know the people pleasers. Unfortunately, they get walked on far too much. They struggle with healthy boundaries and often feel empty and restless because they're giving themselves too much. They're also a giver or a pacifier. I want to circle back around to this pacifier there. And they have to give to soothe their own anxiety about others being unhappy. I know I got a good friend up in Virginia, and she would make sure everyone is happy before she was happy, to the point where it's like it's okay.
They make great HR folks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they can make great babysitters too, but they end up getting it feels like they get dumped on far too much, and they're hyper attuned to other people's needs. Yeah. Okay, so that's a little bit. Let's talk about pleasers.
Well, in essence, people pleasing is something I even struggle with to this day. Like, I hate making people unhappy.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm a very determined, very direct person.
It just doesn't feel good.
I'm fairly bold.
Yeah.
I'm fairly what do they call it? Extroverted, I guess is the best way to say it for the most part. However, when I go home, I kind of retreat. That's like my safe place, right? But let's go back. I want to for people pleasers. I want to hit one specific area, and that is, you said people pleasers. I felt like saying that purple people eater.
Yeah.
It kind of jumped in my head for a second. Sorry about that. Sorry, America. But at any rate, the people pleasers. You said the word giver.
Yeah.
They are overgivers.
Overgivers.
Okay, so there's giving, which is contribution, and there's overgiving.
Talking to the
right.
mic.
So there's. I'm trying. Hello, talking to the mic. I got talking to the mic. All right. So they're overgivers.
Yeah.
Right. They what they do is it means so much to them to have your approval, have your understanding, have your respect, have your affirmation.
Yeah.
That they'll sacrifice anything and everything for it. You'll see a lot of people pleasers, unfortunately, staying in abusive relationships.
That's true.
You'll see people pleasers going bankrupt trying to save your financial picture.
Yeah.
You'll see people pleasers laying down things that really matter to them, that can really help them in their life, as a way to help promote you.
Which then tears apart the relationship. I made a good friend down in Florida, and he and I ended up in a, no kidding, like a 5-hour car ride back from the Keys up to Miami area, which is only supposed to take about 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Bad traffic that day. Poor timing. And we just got to start talking about the different relationships, and he just opened up, and then we talked about the past 3 serious relationships that he had, and I knew that he was a high-ass personality. I knew that he was a giver just because he was always making sure that everyone that we were around was taken care of. And I just asked him, I said, hey, man, do you find yourself in a relationship? Let's talk about the 3 that you didn't really work out so well with. Were you overgiving? He was like, yeah, I felt like I ended up being the one to give all the time. I said, did you find yourself gravitating towards taking people? He said, no, they were actually givers until in the relationship he gave so much it wasn't his fault, but they turned into takers.
Yeah, because you overgive.
Yeah. And then he was just restless and worn thin.
The one thing that people, and this is something I've worked on for probably the last, I don't know, probably solid for like the last 5 or 6 specific years.
Yeah.
Right? And that is actually having boundaries. Knowing that it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine told me that no is a complete sentence. You don't necessarily have to like say anything funny afterwards or put the word but behind it. No but. You don't have to give me that stuff. My kids one time, they wanted to go do something, and I thought it was not in their best interest. So the answer was no.
Yep.
Well, why? Because I said no. Now obviously I'm more of the mind of like trying to explain, because it's like a little educating, but it's okay to not take on somebody else's responsibilities until you've handled your own.
Yeah.
So with people pleasers, a lot of time, part of the understanding the boundaries is learning how to set boundaries that keep them in the healthy lifestyle for themselves.
Yeah.
Whether it's the relationships, like having quality relationships, non-toxic people in your life, or just having boundaries around your financial picture. We had a great team member not long ago at one of my other businesses that was really good about loaning money to his parents.
Whoa.
Loaning money to his family, loaning money to his parents, doing all this kind of stuff. And unfortunately, at the end of the month, he would not have any money to feed himself.
Uh-oh.
You see what I'm saying? You should not be giving financially to anyone out there unless your whole financial picture is in order.
This is in a good place. Yeah.
Now, give to your church, obviously tithe and all that kind of stuff. What I mean is over giving to people to take care of their responsibilities, because unfortunately you're holding them back from possibly learning what they need to learn, which is accountability and responsibility of their own, because you keep bailing them out.
That's such a good point.
Does that make sense?
It sounds like a pleaser would be the person to ignore the flight attendant, put the other person's mask on them, and then pass out.
Kinda, yeah.
All right. So how do they overcome being a people pleaser?
The easiest way to overcome becoming a people pleaser, specifically, or staying in that zone, is to actually spend time getting a healthy boundary system in all 8 pillars.
Healthy boundary system.
And all 8 pillars.
All 8 pillars of life.
Again, if you take one pillar, right? We have 8 of them that we like to talk about.
Yep.
Okay. If you have 2 to 3 boundaries for each one of those that are built on a specific principle.
Yep.
Then the decision's already made before you have to make it, which makes it easier to say no, or this doesn't work for me, or this is not in my best interest.
Yep.
Rather than not having it all together, and then you come and say, I need $100, and I got $100 in my pocket, and I got to eat for a week.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's the biggest difference.
Yeah.
Boundaries are the key to helping a people pleaser and having confidence in them.
Yeah.
And you also have to take a step back and not feel offended, or somehow you're not affirmed, or you're less valuable unless you help someone, which is a more internal issue.
Yeah. And folks, we're actually going to talk about healthy boundaries later, but you can get access to an entire resource and tool on healthy boundaries just by itself, and something I'm going to mention up a little bit later. So now you're going to watch the whole show just to see what I'm going to talk about later. All right, let's move on to vacillators. A vacillator is their agenda often consists of fix the other person, they're the problem, it's not me, it's them.
Yep.
Have you ever been broken up with? Oh, it's not you, it's me. They're the opposite of this. They're saying, oh yeah, it's you, it's not me. They often feel misunderstood and seek to sell their point of view and story to avoid part of the problem. Mm-hmm. And when challenged, the vacillators quickly feel all bad and are filled with shame. So to get to a point of the edge where it's not me, it's the computer, it's not me, it's the weather, it's not me, it's this, and then when they finally realize that it is them, they go off the cliff.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the word that comes down to blame.
Okay.
Vacillators struggle with accountability.
Yeah.
As a whole, vacillating was actually one of the ones that I struggled with for a long time.
Really?
I took some kind of a little internet exam one time on some of these. Actually, some of these are actually kind of in that format. And as I took it, vacillating was my highest. So when I would fail, I would immediately go into like, I suck, I'm horrible, I'm a horrible person, how dare I?
The program manager did something wrong in the system.
And on the front side of it, I would be incredibly defensive.
Yeah.
So if you didn't like my idea, my concept, if you didn't like how I was handling something,
you went to war.
I went to war first.
Oh wow.
Okay. So that's a vacillator in a nutshell. They also kind of are wishy-washy to it. They're non-committal to a certain extent.
Okay.
They have a hard time with the commitment level. Mm-hmm. For me, when I dug back into all the way down, right, to figure out where this was coming from, when I did my discovery, my exploration activities, for example, that we do, when I went through that myself, what I uncovered was a lot of that came down to security. I constantly felt like I was going to have a lack of security, like something was going to be taken from me, because in my life, I've ridden one heck of a wave up and down. You know, having some moderate success as a child, parents doing well, to all of a sudden not having parents for a little while.
Yeah, a lot of instability.
Finding love and affirmation from my grandmother, and then my grandmother passing away. Starting off moving from a single wide trailer to a nice house, and then losing the house. You know, all of these various things, where it's like the rugs keep constantly being taken out from under you, which makes it hard to trust. It makes it hard to feel secure. And because of that, you're never really sure which way you're coming or going. And on top of that, because of that aspect, you're also going to the situation, well, I really can't trust myself, so therefore, I'm going to go ahead and lean into my ideas.
Okay.
It's a way of self-preservation, a way of self-protection.
Right. Try to go into protection mode based on how many times you've been burnt in the past. Okay. So what are some common traits a vacillator might be able to recognize, like, I feel, I'm definitely a vacillator, or they feel it bubbling up again? You
know, the easiest way to understand it is it always someone else's fault? Do they have a hard time pulling accountability, saying, hey, I'm the buck that stops here? You know, I was having a conversation with one of my team members, one of my other businesses on the way here, And it was it was a lighthearted conversation overall. You were actually in the vehicle when we were talking to him, and I just asked him point blank. I said, "Have I ever broken my word to you?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, no." All right. So why do you have anxiety right now?
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's because of the rug being taken out so many times, and some of that commitment stuff kind of related to it.
Yeah.
Vacillators will blame. And it's always someone. So because of that, it's always someone else's fault.
Yeah.
They have a hard time, or they have an element of always being defensive. So
always on guard.
Always on guard. Always willing to go to war, and will actually overcompensate a lot of times with anger or frustration or even tears to a degree to get control of the situation.
Wow. Okay. So what do they do to overcome and conquer this vacillating roadblock?
It comes down to accountability.
Okay.
It comes down to controlling the things you really can control.
Okay.
It comes down to becoming a better listener.
Oh, yeah.
It comes down to fighting the need to feel defensive. When a lot of times that you're helping understand someone else's opinion.
Yeah.
A vacillator's greatest sentence in the world will always be, "Can I help you understand?" We've said that sentence 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Because it's a powerful thing. It allows an open door and allows hearing to happen. Hearing to occur.
Okay.
So that's one of the best and easiest ways to spot one and then begin to work on it. Is the buck stops here.
Yeah.
That was it for me. That was the one sentence that I dealt with.
Can you say that sentence one more time?
The buck stops with me. The buck stops here.
Okay.
Ultimately, if you make a bad decision here, or any of our team members at Journey Principles make a bad decision here, ultimately it's my decision. Right? At CHE, for example, my other business, my large company, same kind of situation. If a team member makes a decision and it's a bad decision, it's still my decision because I hired them.
True. Yeah.
I may not have spent enough time with them. So in a roundabout way, it's all about accountability.
All about accountability. If they can't trust themselves, find someone that they can trust for that accountability, right?
Absolutely.
It's also important for them to know it's probably good to think, hey, it's okay to mess up. If you do mess up,
it's called grace.
Own it, but give yourself some grace. You're a human. You're going to mess up. Your ideas are not always going to be fantastic. All right, let's move on to controller. Now, I promise we will not spend the next hour talking about this because Stephen and I both have a past of being controllers. And even sometimes today we find ourselves doing it and he has to call me out or I have to sort of respectfully call him out in a way to say that, hey, let the other person talk. All right, so let's talk about controllers. Controllers can feel threatened when given anyone else the kind of power or flexibility. This one was a big problem for me a long time ago. They often feel, well, if they would have done it my way, it would have been much better. That might have been true, but it's not always the case. And they don't realize that the control is their way to deal with feeling helplessness or powerless. Right? So let's dive into that. Let's try not to spend the rest of the time on it, but let's try to educate.
Well, the root cause of a controller typically goes back to a scenario where they had lack of control as they were growing up. In other words, they were put in circumstances, situation where they had zero control.
Yeah.
And so their first clinging moment to actually digging themselves out and feeling a sense of security and peace is to try to control everything.
Right.
I've
when they
got
first get that
people that are close
control,
to me, not in my household, but people that are close to me that are relentless controllers. In other words, it's everything is my way or the highway. And it comes more down to it comes more down to if I let you take this, if I let you take this ball and run, if I give you the room, you're not going to do it like I would do it.
Okay.
Okay. Now here's the thing. So our creative team here at Journey Principles is terrific.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, they are.
You guys have probably seen a lot of the newest graphics and stuff that have hit Facebook.
Did you guys dig that
there.
video? If you dig the video, put a comment up there and say something nice about it or something awesome, creative about it.
That was Brian. That was totally Brian.
All Brian.
Right.
Yep.
Amber's done a terrific job recently. Well, she's done a terrific job altogether, but she's done a terrific job recently with some of the Facebook posting we've done. We've got some of the largest shares and likes and stuff, and some quotes that I put out at different live events and stuff like that.
And I know where you're going with this. You actually told me about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, to release that creative idea control to the creative team. That's what they're there for. And man, their stuff got really good. I was just being a controller back then and shutting people down.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, we all have gifts and talents to bring to the table. Creative people are naturally creative.
Yeah.
They're constantly creative, right? And you have to give them room to run. Now, at the same time, there's a flip side. You can actually be very creative and then say, you can almost have the other thing happen. You can be very creative and actually be a controller, so if someone tweaks your idea, doesn't like your idea, or wants to put a different spin on it, you can totally go the other direction. right? But when it comes down to people, try to put them in their lane and let them run.
Yeah.
Right? We sat down at a similar meeting, I believe, and I said, well, Brian's good with video. Let Brian roll with video.
Yeah.
I don't need to be involved in video.
Yeah.
You want me on the camera, I'll get on the camera. But,
Sure.
right? I don't need to be involved in editing. I don't need to be involved in doing some of the cool features that he does and the words popping up and what he calls lower thirds and f-stop and all these different words that I knew nothing about 2 years ago. You know? I don't need to be involved in shading graphics or whatever like that. I may have an idea. I may need to illustrate something to give to the graphics team and say, hey, look, here's an idea.
On a vision.
But when I give the idea, a controller, what I call a reformed controller, a controller that's learning not to control, says, here's an idea, and let it go.
We're controllers in rehab.
Yeah, right.
That's who we are. We're controllers in rehab. All right, so how can someone that does have controlling tendency take control of that, stop it as it comes up? You know, this happens to me so often where I'll feel that controlling tendency come up, especially when it comes to my household. And man, I'm glad I shut up recently. A couple months ago, close to a year ago, stop talking, stop controlling, because my wife is just taking off like a rocket right now. But I want you to educate all of us on the same thing you educated me on about a year ago.
You know, it comes down to you got to let them run, right? Be aware. Take a moment and be aware of the people that are around you. Just be aware. Look at them and look at the potential, the gifts, the strengths that they have, and then affirm those gifts, strengths, and then give them something and let them do it.
Trust and believe in them.
Trust. It comes down to trust and believe.
Yeah.
It really does. Let them have it, let go of it, and focus on something else.
Yeah.
Focus on something that you're good at, that is the strength, or that's something that you're passionate about. You know, and so on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a fairly creative person, right? I might be a 7. I've got people here at JP that are 10s and 11s and 12s, right?
Yep.
Let them roll.
Yep.
Right? I'm good at strategy. I'm a 9 or a 10 on strategy. I need to be strategizing. I need to be creating structure. I need to be forecasting. I need to be thinking through those things.
Sure.
You know, you have a really good gift of leadership. It's been developing for the last 3 years, right? You're good. You because of the control issue. How much of greater of a leader have you become just because you began to work on your own roadblocks?
Yeah, you're not thinking about the other stuff that you felt like you needed control that was running you thin. You let the professionals take care of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I find that people, all right, so people that deal with controlling issues on a regular basis, they're oftentimes the most anxiety-ridden people on the planet.
Yeah, I was full of anxiety not too long ago.
Because you can't control everything.
That's true.
You really can't.
Yeah.
And the harder you try to grasp, the tighter you hold, the more it turns into jello and squeezes through your fingers.
Yeah, and I heard someone say a long time ago, you know, for early stages of my military career was that you don't have all the ideas in the room, but if you go in acting like you have all the ideas in the room, you lose out on so many great ideas, so many great opportunities, because other people will just either shut down or wait for you to shut up and then go away. You'd have no idea what you just missed out on.
You also don't know what kind of opportunities are laid before you.
Oh my gosh! I mean,
right? You don't know what kind of relationships are in the room that you just turned off because you went a little too far.
Yeah.
You know, listening is always the best way for that, for sure.
Yeah. Simon Sinek says, "Practice the art of speaking last." Man, that hit home with me when I heard him say that. And that's been one of my things I practice is practice speaking last.
You know, and that's one of the things that I always do when I'm working with people too, specifically when we're doing strategy sessions.
Yeah.
Is I want to understand them.
Yeah.
I want to be able to see before they can, in many respects, where the triggers are coming from.
Yeah.
Because if I can do that, then I can ask pertinent questions in a way to bring them and help them discover it for themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So that's absolutely gold.
It allows the other one to offer up a stable influence. Otherwise, they don't trust you to keep going. So controllers.
Let go.
Let go. All right, let's move on to victims. So the victim... Folks will say victim mentality, but it's not a victim mentality. It's a victim roadblock.
Yeah.
This person can overcome this. This is, they may practice victim mentality or victim things, but this is not really a mentality. That's important to point out. You know, there's a huge difference between mentality and roadblock, right? So victims are accustomed to living without hope, and they don't often expect much out of life. They were taught that blaming was an easier way to gain than learning. That's a huge lie. They often feel that everything and everyone is going to be much better off without them, or they don't really need them. Even they'll go so far as to, if you're trying to compliment them or lift their spirits, they'll quickly bring you back down. So let's talk about victims. What's going on there?
Let's talk about where victim mentality, victimization mentality typically comes from.
Yeah.
Most often, when I dig into somebody's life and we're doing a strategy session, one of the things that we dig into and we find is that the person had a very, very, very toxic upbringing. Okay. They were often told they were unworthy, they were unloved, they weren't special. They were, in other words, you have affirmation, and then you have the lack of affirmation.
Yeah.
This is the opposite of this is the opposite of affirmation. This is one or two, three levels below that.
Jeez, would you say this is one of the biggest roadblocks? This is the parents that were telling the kids, "You suck, you'll never measure up, you're worthless," right? What happens instinctively is that creates a root in them where they always believe it, right? So So anytime something happens in their life, they only see the negative. They seldom see the positive that is present many times in the adversity itself. They focus on the negative. Yeah, constantly.
The word hopeless comes to mind more than anything else when we're talking about victimization. They never feel opportunity. They always live in kind of a pessimistic state. And a lot of times, like I said, it's that here's what it is. This is one sentence. I was meant to suffer.
Really?
I was meant to suffer.
They've come to believe that?
They own it. That becomes part of their persona. So they're always expecting something bad to happen.
This sounds like a really deep hole to help someone get out of.
Again, what you focus on, you find. So if a person is trying to dig out of that hole, a lot of times in our strategy sessions, one of the things we try to do is we try to help them see the benefit of the adversity that's coming through. A lot of that has to do with mentorship. Victim mentality is difficult, but it's not impossible. Okay, hope comes from the belief that something possible could happen.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay? Yeah.
Suffering, on the other hand, or the belief that suffering will always be present, always robs tomorrow and today of today's joy. Right? It always robs. Okay. It's one of the ones that I think people struggle with the most, especially now at times in the world. There's a lot more people who are overly criticizing people, not kind of looking at themselves.
Unfortunately.
And that kind of thing. They're the people that call you on a regular basis, or you feel the need to call people on a regular basis and tell them how bad your life is. Or, this just went out, that just went out, this person doesn't like me, this person's talking. They always have typically have a phenomenon kind of behind the scenes, which is that, somebody's always talking about me. Someone's always, I know they're talking about me.
Oh, wow.
I know they don't like me. That paranoia, it's an unhealthy paranoia.
Yeah.
And that typically someone who struggles deeply with victim mentality will live in that space, which is why they feel less hope.
So they have less hope. It's almost like you paint the picture of Eeyore, dark cloud kind of over the head sort of thing. How do they get out of this? I mean, it sounds like they're in a very, very deep hole. That's why it's so dark. There's no sunlight getting in that hole.
But see, even now they're like, yeah, that's how I feel.
That's probably thinking exactly.
I can't get out.
Exactly. So how do they get out of there?
The biggest thing that I think one of the best ways to do that is to constantly spend time with a trained professional.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, Michael Garner, we mentioned earlier, he's great for this.
Yep.
There's several, Dr. Jason Newsom's great for this.
Dr. Newsom, absolutely.
There's several members or associates of the Journey Principles team that are really good at this.
Mama G, Karen Gilliam.
Yep, the strategy sessions we do, all of those are tools to help someone dig out.
Yeah.
I will tell you that victim mentality thinking or victimization thinking as a whole takes some practice.
Yeah.
Utilizing the challenge thought that we talk about a lot.
Right.
It's everyone's talking about me too. No one's talking about me.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
And if they are, so what?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It kind of goes to that.
So you have a challenge thought with it, right? Which you've talked about at length. So they also need to know that they're important. They also need to know that little things happen. They actually roll out into bigger things.
That's right.
All right. Well, I remember a conversation Nikki and I were having at one point. I just said, "Gosh, why does that person think like that? Like, I feel like I just need to go give them a hug, slap an emoji with it, and it just seems so dark. Like, why would they like that?" And she just said, they don't understand that the little things that they do and the little things that happen to them have a bigger rippling effect in their life.
Yeah. Well, they also don't believe they're worthy of anything good.
Yeah.
A person who lives in a victim place does not believe they're worthy of anything.
And for you and I, we understand life is what you make it.
I learned that life is what you make it. I didn't grow up believing that.
Okay, so maybe the same thing's going on with victim roadblock is they don't believe that life is what you make it. They may believe that life is just already laid out for them, and it's just going to happen whether they do anything about it or not.
People that live in the victim mindset let life happen to them. They don't do things to make life happen for them.
Okay, so how can they fix that?
Like I said, the best way to do it is to actually get with a healthy mentorship and coach.
Okay.
I had elements of victim thinking myself when I was kind of digging out of that homeless season of my life.
Yeah.
Everything would happen to me. You know, I didn't happen to think about the fact that, well, maybe I made a bad decision. Like I walked off a job that was paying me a bunch of money, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, and proceeded to lose everything. Like that decision somehow didn't come into fruition of what I was going through, right?
Right.
You know, that I was not in the point where I was ready to look at myself. So there's got to be an honest look at yourself. There's got to be healthy mentorship. There's got to be great coaching.
Yeah.
There's got to be a learning. You have to put learning above all, right? You have to have a handful of people that can speak life into you because you have to replace all the garbage that was put into you before.
And then believe that stuff they speak to. All right.
Which takes time. It's almost like a double pouring first.
Time and repetition.
Time and repetition. There's a lot of repeat.
That's right. That's right. All right, let's move into
I wonder if everybody's still stuck in the shower.
Still washing their hair? Well, you know, you're not washing your hair.
Yeah.
Did you see that? All right, let's talk about self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is not an act. It's a tragic process that puts people against their own thoughts and impulses. They have a deep sense of unworthiness and extreme low self-worth. They harm themselves in order to keep them in place where they see their value. And when they feel unworthy, they will sabotage many of the 8 pillars to hold themselves back down. This is when someone, you know, they can get the compliments, they can see the awards, the accolades, and they quickly replace it with, yeah, but I messed up on blah, 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 or something like that.
Well, they live a life of what if. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if the world falls apart? What if,
oh, wow. Okay.
They live in that space. You know, you have the victimization or victim thinking here. Self-sabotage, believe it or not, is actually one of the steps moving out of that.
Okay.
Right? So you go from feeling inherently unwanted, unworthy to having a level of worth, but it has a ceiling to it. Okay.
So you don't allow yourself to go so far above it?
Exactly. So basically you're getting ready to take this promotion, right? This promotion is coming to you and you're excited about it and you're ready to go. And then about a week before, you decide to go ahead and go do something stupid on the job. And you can't explain why. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're just like, well, I think I'm going to do this. And it ruins that chance. Or you've been dating someone for a year and a half, or whatever, and things have been going awesome.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, because you're getting scared, it's becoming real. You're beginning to feel, right? They tend to avoid feeling, right? All of a sudden, you may go sleep with somebody else, or may go do something stupid to sabotage the relationship.
Just to mess it up.
Self-sabotage comes from a lot of different places, but it comes from the basic desire of feeling unworthy and unloved, or unworthy of what's coming. Okay? I'll give you an example. So when I was trying to get out of my own way, honestly, and began building a business and all that kind of stuff, my first major hurdle, major challenge was actually feeling like that I was okay to be successful. Because I was, at that time in my life, I was the black sheep of the family. No one at that time had stepped out on faith to the degree that I had, and kind of really leaned out there and kind of really put myself out there. And then I began to become moderately successful. I began to get myself out of debt. The companies began to grow. The people began to grow. The things around me began to grow. And the very first thing, I remember I bought a sports car one time in my 20s, and the Joker sat in the garage. I didn't want anyone to know I had it, and in a weird way, I'm kind of glad. In some ways, I'm glad because I didn't want. It would have been just as polar, just a negative effect on my life had I just been like braggadocious, driving around, pulling the top down, all that kind of stuff. But it came down to the situation was, all right, apparently God feels like I'm worthy to bless me at this level. I need to be a great steward of it. I can't be an idiot. I can't go self-sabotage myself. I can't go out there and make a stupid business deal or lie to somebody or bring distrust into the business. I can't do those things. I can't go and betray people on a regular basis and expect to be blessed.
Right.
That was my first major hurdle, was feeling like it was okay to become successful.
Wow. How long did it take you to get over that?
Who says I'm over it? right?
Really?
You know, in this grand scheme of things, God has been doing a lot of really wild, crazy things in my life recently.
Yeah.
Okay, He's opened a lot of doors. He's doing a lot of cool things. There's obviously some things we can't really share out here right now that He's doing that if they come to fruition, will be
But
really
stay tuned.
Will be really stinking cool. And I have to be honest. I mean, from time to time, I don't feel worthy of doing some of the things that this may entail. Maybe some of the travel that may come with it, maybe some of the responsibilities that may come with it. At the same time, I've learned to surrender and just be obedient.
Yeah.
Right? I've learned to just lean in and say, if this is what you want from me, that's what I'm doing. If you feel like I'm either worthy or you're going to develop me to make me worthy of this, then I'm going to lean in and I'm going to try to make something happen.
Got it. That's a good thing to end with, is self-sabotage. I also feel that way sometimes as well. When things start to change, they start to climb up, you kind of want to go back to what's comfortable and you already know because you've been there before.
Yeah.
Now this new level that you have the opportunity to walk through that door that's been open, it's very uncomfortable. It's almost like, well, that's not really meant for me, sort of thing. Yeah. And then you start to backpedal. But I like what you said there. You said lean in the direction and say, this is what you want. This is where I'm going.
Again, if someone who's struggling with self-sabotaging behaviors, they probably need to have somebody that can speak life in them just as much as the victimization. Remember, I told you it's almost like a level of breaking through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody that goes from victim thinking has to go through self-sabotage in order to get to a healthy place.
That's a good important note.
It's one I have yet to see anybody to hop, skip, and jump it.
Right. That's a good important note. So as you're growing out of the victim roadblock, you're getting over that. You're conquering that. Now you're going to face the next one, which is self-sabotage. It's just a natural. That makes perfect sense. They also need to know that affirmation is a big thing.
Yep.
You know, and put themselves in a place where they do feel worthy. Nikki was sharing with me that that's part of why she got involved with animals, and she put herself in the SPCA environment where she hung around animals, you know, and she was able to help them. So we got a little bit of time left, about 5 minutes. We're going to roll through the next two, but not to cheat people. Then you got the enabler. The enablers, they see that their job is to save everyone. Save everyone. You know, save the manatees, the sea turtles.
People pleasing on steroids.
Yeah. And they have a spirit of repeated codependence and seek validation only if they can save someone else from destruction. Now, many people would say that the millennial generation is a victim, if you will, of an enabling parenthood, right? Which we know to not be true because not all millennials are the same. It's just unfair to say that, right? But this almost seems like everyone should get a trophy mentality to me. When I read this, I'm thinking like, yep, you're the coach that gives away trophies to everybody.
You know, I kind of feel a very similar way. There's definitely generations where they could have they were either overparented or underparented.
Exactly.
Okay. Parenting is a balance.
Yes.
It comes with corrections just as much as it does with love and affirmation.
Gosh, okay? I hate having to spank my child, but you know, he needs to learn. I mean, we don't obviously go above anything, but he needs to learn that what he did was wrong.
Yeah. So let me. I'll give the best example I've ever been able to communicate enablement mentality is the parent that has to save their son or daughter from a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction. Okay. They'll spend all kinds of money. They'll put all kinds of energy. And really, probably, unfortunately, what probably needs to happen is the child probably needs to learn that their choices lead to different outcomes. And then the child has to determine what kind of outcomes do I really want. Yeah. The problem is the person begins to identify their worth with helping someone else. Yeah. So their self-worth is tied to whether or not that person gets better or not. That's good. In many cases, once that person actually gets better, a lot of times the person actually goes into their own little mini depression because now there's no one to save.
So what do? How do they conquer this enabling roadblock?
Honestly, they're gonna have to, it goes back to healthy boundaries. Okay. Having healthy boundaries, no means no. Yep. Don't say this is your last chance and then give them 3 more after it. Kind of deal. Yep. Put something in place to kind of protect yourself. Maybe you have a mentorship. Maybe there's somebody around you that can help educate you and say, well, look, you know, if that you can bounce stuff off. If I do it this way, what can happen? You know, 3 option, kind of a 3 option person. Someone you can say, well, this is how I think I'll do it. 1, 2, 3. Got it. Right? Someone to bounce some information off of. But the biggest thing that you can probably do to kind of combat enabling is to actually focus on making your own life better and really focus on creating a structured and safe environment for yourself. Because enablers always end up on a diving board or walking the plank.
Yeah.
And are always on the tip of it. Right? You can. I watched a parent. Unfortunately, one of their children unfortunately stole something, embezzled some money somewhere, and the next thing you know, that parent spent their entire livelihood, their entire savings database, right, to pay for all that child's court cost.
Wow.
Even though they knew the child was guilty. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because in their mind,
they needed to save them.
And reality was the person probably needed to actually face the consequences of the actions.
Yeah.
And I would say that to my own kids.
Yeah, and they probably didn't learn anything from it because they were saved.
Well, unfortunately, the child ended up going to jail anyway. And then their entire savings that they had amassed for over 40 or 50 years was gone.
Wow. Jeez.
Right? Again, getting out of that savior complex, right? But one savior, he's awesome. Lean into him, surrender to him. Everybody else,
follow the principles.
Follow the principles and just be a good steward of what you've been given. And stop there.
That's right. All right, let's start. Let's end with one of the most scariest ones, and that is the aggressor. The aggressor's greatest fear is losing control, so they have that controlling problem as well. They come across loud and abrupt before a disagreement, so they can kind of gain control of the situation. Any unresolved anger is really at the heart of the root. So, a couple minutes. What was an aggressor like?
The aggressors of all of these, other than people pleasing, the aggressor is probably the easiest one to start or spot.
Yeah, because it's pretty open
because
loud.
anytime the person is told no, or they're not going to get something that they deem, or I've had situations where aggressors have been like, well, no, you said, and you're like, no, I didn't say that. And you can actually have witnesses saying, no, you didn't say that.
Yeah.
And they're still convinced. And the moment that you say no, or that didn't happen, they are like, rah!
Oh, jeez.
Right? They go 0 to 100, 0 to angry in about 5 seconds.
Wow.
Okay? And they're doing that as a way to kind of prevent you from actually getting them to admit they're wrong.
Wow.
In some cases. Aggressors are controllers on steroids.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Okay?
Sounds like it.
A controller could be, we talk about, there's not joking, but there's things like OCD and things like that, so controlling doorknobs and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
When I say aggressor, this person's only mode of communication or gaining control or preventing someone else from having control or preventing is to go 0 to 100.
0 to 100 in like less than a second.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, so how can I fix this? If I'm through the roof in a second, how can I fix this?
Self-awareness. It comes into play.
Great place to start.
Being humbled.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, aggressors typically learn the hard way. So it's being hit with that proverbial 4x4. There's the element of having to be humbled at the last minute, kind of thing. That tends to get their attention.
Yeah.
Right. It's the element of becoming self-aware that, hey, I just answered a question and I went from 0 to 100. I need to be aware that just happened.
Yeah, I need to be aware of my blood pressure as it's rising.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. We've had some aggressors that we work with that they had no idea that's how they were until you showed them video footage of one question being answered and watching them go boom.
So they worked with a coach, right? They worked with someone that they trusted. Is it safe to say that all of these roadblocks, in case anyone out there resonated with the roadblock or two, is it safe to say that they should work with a coach, should work with someone that they trust?
I believe they should. And I'll tell you why. It's like as clearly, if you feel stuck, if you've been stuck for a long time, either you're unaware that the roadblock is there, or you're not really sure which ones that you really gravitate towards.
Yeah.
Okay. A coach, a strategist, someone that can help you is going to be able to help you see things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
See it from a different angle. I've had coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had some really powerful coaches, really great mentors in my life. And all of them helped me see things from a different angle that gave me a different perspective that led me down a different path and allowed me to handle my business, so to speak, and keep growing.
Yeah.
My constant thing now is I'm constantly looking for that new mentor, right? As I continue to grow, because if I continue to grow, hopefully they'll continue to grow.
Exactly. That's a good way to end it today, folks. In case you didn't get all that down, we did give you a lot. There's a lot of nuggets that Stephen shared. This is all of us, right? Every one of us hits on this at some point, or we know someone that hits on this at some point. Don't worry. The show's going to live out there, but you guys get You can get pre-registration access to what we call the learning platform, the Transform You Online Learning Platform. The pre-registration is coming out soon. This lesson is going to be in it, and the Healthy Boundaries lesson is going to be in it. How to Overcome Conflict is going to be in it. There's a ton of stuff that's going to be in it, and you guys get pre-registration access to this. All you got to do is text TU Online, that's the letter T, the letter U, online, to 33444, and just shoot them your email address, and we'll hook you up with the rest. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you guys next week on the Journey Principles Radio Show. Take care.
Take care, guys.